Hey, how's it going? This is Jeff from Jeffrey-Thomas.com, and I am going to walk you through Estudio by Dionisio Aguado. Very beginning classical guitar piece, and you don't really have to play this on classical guitar. A lot of my students are playing on steel string acoustics, electric guitars. This is very cool to start with for learning how this works, right? The right hand, super important. So on that subject, thumb, pulgar. That's the Spanish name, pulgar. I'm probably not saying that right. Indio, index finger. Medio, middle finger, right? Anular, ring finger. Chiquita, pinky, small. Those are the Spanish names. There's also Latin names, and sometimes, to point out some discrepancies, you will see T for thumb. Anyway, another thing about the notation here, we are in standard notation, so no tablature, sorry. And you're in 2/4 on your time signature, and it's pretty much straight 16th notes. So what we're looking at is 1 eana, 2 eana, dividing a quarter note into 4 subdivisions. So here you are at 54 with the metronome. Okay, counting. 1 eana, 2 eana, 3 eana, or no threes here, we're in 2/4, sorry. Okay, a bit on the right hand placement, and then we'll get started. Usually for classical guitar, thumb around the sound hole, right? Edge of the sound hole. And eye behind it, so you do have some sort of a gap here, a slight gap between the thumb and the first finger. Otherwise, they're going to be hitting each other, right? And this right hand stays pretty solid, but relaxed. So there's not a lot of movement here for everything you'll see. Now getting started, we're going to be here in first position. A, 3rd string, 2nd fret. 2nd string, 1st fret for C, and then open E. And now the pattern through this whole piece of music is P-I-M-I. Okay, so if I was counting without the metronome, 1 eana, 2 eana. So you see there's not a lot of movement needed here in the right hand. It's very relaxed, right? Even when you start to go up to faster speeds. That's really important, and it's not, you're not chasing the strings, right? Everything's kind of in place. Moving to the second measure, we have a G sharp. Okay, so we have there's an open G, and then a sharp raises the note to the 1st fret there. So that's G sharp. Then open B, open E. All right, and then moving to E on the 4th string, 2nd fret, and then open B, open E. 3rd measure in. Normally B is played open, right? 2nd string open. This time we have B on the 3rd string at the 4th fret with your pinky. Now, anytime you're dealing with traditional notation for jazz, for classical, for whatever, number in a circle is going to tell you what string. That's super important. Okay, number in a circle is underneath usually the notes and telling you that that note is supposed to be played on that string. In this case we have B on the 3rd string. Okay, so that whole measure is, right? Then the last measure of the top line. And then the 5th string open. Okay. Moving into the 2nd line. Now make sure you're checking out the natural note sheet for guitar, because it'll make sense of this. It's going to map out the open notes all the way up to the 12th fret and give you a good idea of where things are. Super important. Okay, 2nd line. Starting the same as we did in the 1st measure. Now moving to a C sharp. C sharp on the 2nd string at the 2nd fret, 2nd finger. And now F, 4th string, 3rd fret. D, 2nd string, 3rd fret with the pinky, and then F again on the 1st string. Now the only difference in the next beat is you just take your 3rd finger off. and play the open D. So, okay. Moving on, third measure in on the second line. Okay, then a G sharp again. Always continuing with P-I-M-I, and I need to point out that we're using a free stroke, which means that you are gliding over the strings. That's a free stroke. Rest stroke is where you're actually resting on the strings. So for arpeggios and for speed, very light, no time for resting down here, right? Okay. Last measure of the second line. And then ending on a quarter note on beat 2. Okay, the start of the third line, starting out the same, this little A minor chord, then, right, G, B, and then F there. Keep the F down, bring the third finger over to the 6th string at the 3rd fret, and then, so that measure, right, third measure of the third line, okay, that fourth measure is the same as the second of the third line, and then the last line. A little bit of a C chord there, dropping down, okay, and then to open A, C and E after that, bring the third finger back down. See how I'm not picking my first finger up and keeping it down on that C because it's common? Less movement the better, right? And then third measure in on the 4th line, and then E, D, open E and back to the D, last measure. Okay, so kind of chill with no time, but I'm going to be keeping track of, you know, a rhythm here for you. I'll run through the whole thing. Ready? Remember, 1 E and a 2 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a. Right? Next line. So you don't have to, you know, cut that last note off if you don't want to. Okay, now that's without, you know, tempo, sort of fluctuating a bit. Now you should be practicing it with strict tempo. So here's a bit of that at 72. The piece is actually up. It's supposed to be allegro. Allegro 120 is the slowest allegro. Here we go. Ready, go. Right? So, you know, to make it manageable and to make sure that you're keeping track of things, it's not a bad idea to practice slow. Here's the same thing at 72. Ready, go. Okay, so on and so forth. Now, don't play outside of your hands. This is an important rule that I need to remind myself of all the time. You know, there's nothing wrong with being ambitious, but you've got to have reality kick in. So if this needs to be slower, you know, it's got to be slower. And then at the end here, I've given you practice tips, which are going to address that subject. So number 1, down there in the practice tips section, is taking this move, which is one of the ones that a lot of my students stumble on, and practicing it as a block chord. So pretend we're in 2/4. We're going to go like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, so on and so forth. So you work that little switch over and over until it's cool, until you've got it. Now down here in the right hand, I'm springing away from the guitar just to practice them as a block chord. Still using PIM, by the way. Now with time, that would be, where are we at? 60. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, right? If you need to slow it down to whole notes, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Now you see that I'm not holding it for a full 4 beats or a full 2 beats. I'm just using that as an increment to get my hand in the spot where it needs to be. Okay, number 2 in the practice tip area is running it as it would be in the music. And when you can do that, you're fine. You won't stumble on it when you see it. Okay? Same thing with number 3 is the next area. This is the C sharp on the second beat of the second line, moving into this D minor over F chord, which is the first beat of the second measure of the second line. Isolating that area, this is another area that a lot of my students stumble on. Half notes, making my move quick, right? If you need to go to whole notes, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, just to get the muscle memory, and then put it into motion as it is in the music. Right? Number 5 is where does that happen in the music? That happens at the last line, the first measure of the last line. For some reason, whenever we introduce this pinky, there's a bit of confusion for the left hand, right? So here you are again, I'm at 60 on the metronome, and half note switching, block chord, right? Then if you want to be a hot shot, quarters. Every beat. When you can do that, right, you're not going to have trouble. And then as it is in the music, number 6, over and over. Super important to be able to isolate these little areas. Number 7 is the third measure of the last line. This chord. And once again going to the E, the D, and then the open E. Second finger, pinky again. Seems to be just a little bit of a problem. Okay, so here we are at 60, half notes, go. Right? And then okay, so 16th note subdivisions. For classical guitar, if you want to if you're on a classical guitar, I recommend it because it's going to be using different patterns of the right hand. I and M and A, I and A, all these different combinations to get this nice and balanced, this right hand. Or, just for acoustic guitar or electric guitar, pick out the 16th note divisions for guitar. It'll cover the acoustic and the electric. And then the other thing you want to check out for sure is the natural note sheet, which is going to get you all of your open notes all the way up to the 12th fret with the natural notes on each string. Super important to start seeing how guitar music is on paper without having to depend on tablature all the time, right? Okay, so I hope that was cool, and I will maybe hear from you. All right. See ya.